What's up, guys? So today I wanted to talk about kind of the probably the opposite problem that I made on my last video about how there are too few mods for certain stats, and instead I'm going to talk about how in the Helminth system there are too many options that do the same thing, and also about how many, in turn, then how many Helminth abilities are more or less useless in my opinion. Now, this is not to say that if you like using a certain Helminth that it's like you're wasting your time, or that even that it's completely worthless. I'm sure there are plenty, for every Helminth ability there is some build where it functions very well. However, broadly as a, in terms of popular use, there are whole categories of Helminth abilities that just don't do anything. They are pretty useless. So I have the Helminth abilities here, and for the most part, I kind of see Helminth abilities in like a handful of categories. You've got kind of your generic grouping, so this is like Air Burst, this is Larva, this is Ensnare, anything that just groups enemies up but doesn't do anything else. And then you have your generic damaging abilities, which consists of, I think Aqua Blades is a good example. That's a grouping ability. I would say Dark Verse is a generic damaging ability. Desiccation is not really a damaging ability because its primary function is to open finishers. Elemental Ward, in the middle of all that word jargon, there is a number of abilities that are just raw damage. Fire Blast, this is just raw damage because there's no... I don't think you get the immolation meter if you subsume this. Firewalker, this is also mostly just pure damage. It does provide you a speed increase, but for the most part this is just pure damage. Ice Wave, you know, stuff like that is your pure damage. And then you have sort of your utility. For that, I think things like Nourish, obviously, Condemn, because it's crowd control and survivability. As I said, Desiccation is survivability. Defy is survivability. You've got Omamori for survivability. You've got Null Star, I would say, for survivability. Eclipse for survivability, of course. And then you kind of have your miscellaneous ones, which for the most part are the Helminth-specific abilities, so like Parasitic Armor, which is just really weird, especially like Rebuild Shield. I mean, this is just a super strange ability. Sickening Pulse even is pretty strange. Voracious Metastasis is a pretty weird one. But so those are kind of like generally what I think of the three types. Now, when you think about the most used subsumes, right? I think top three across the board, you've got Nourish as the clear number one because it is a literal instant solution to energy economy. If you ever feel like you don't have enough energy, you can subsume Nourish and probably you'll fix your energy economy. And then second place, I would say either Roar or Eclipse. Just for the raw damage buff. Obviously Eclipse also functions as the damage reduction, however I think not very many people use it for that because, similar to my first video, most people are just trying to dump as much damage as possible. And then in third place is probably the other one of Roar or Eclipse. And outside of those three, maybe like something like Larva or Airburst throw in there because people used to, at least I would see a lot of builds that used grouping Helminths. Nowadays, not really that much, but maybe. And those are kind of generally the only three Helminths that I see people use. Back before Jade Shadows, there was a lot of talk about what armor strip Helminth is the best, like Thorough Strike, Terrify, Pillage. There was big debates on which was the best one, and then for certain builds, you would see one of those three. But nowadays, after Jade Shadows, I think most people don't really care about stripping armor, because you just kill the enemy. And so we kind of come to the point of this, which is that, you know, we have 74 Helminth abilities, and 3 of them are commonly used, and then all the rest of these, I mean, I have a couple builds where I use some of these. Perspiacity, honestly, ironically, is probably, like, one of my most used ones, and it's on, like, 3 frames. But, like, I mean, I'm just scrolling here, there are so many abilities that just, I mean, why would you ever subsume them, right? Because if your frame doesn't have any damaging abilities, right? So let's take Rhino as the example. Obviously you can deal damage with Stomp and Charge, but, like, not a relevant amount. The solution to that is not, oh, let me subsume weird scythes, and now I can deal damage with them. The solution is to just use weapons. And if your frame, let's say, has, if your frame has no, like, mobility, it's going to be pretty rare that you have your Helminth slot open to replace that mobility. So, for example, my Mesa, which I value mobility on, I could get Wrathful Advance and get some decent, pretty good mobility with that, but I need Nourish for the energy economy, right? Like, my Helminth is not free enough that I can slot something as quality of life as movement speed. Archon Shards, obviously, you have 5 slots, and I would say none of the Archon Shard effects are really dominant, that you kind of have to pick them over something quality of life like move speed. But Helminth, you get 1 per frame. So it's pretty rare that I think you can subsume something like move speed. And then crowd control, I mean, look, crowd control in 2025, I mean, there is 1,000,001 videos saying that crowd control is dead. I kind of agree. So another facet of a lot of subsumes is the fact that there are augments for the abilities that you are subsuming. I mean, they even added a way to see them really easily. And this kind of doubles back onto my previous video about how the state of augments. But, for example, I saw it down here. Yeah, something like Shock, right? You are never subsuming Shock to use it for this ability. You're never doing it so you can zap some lightning at a guy. You're doing it so you can get Shock Troop. And now you're telling me that in order for Shock to be a good subsume, I have to also spend a mod slot to make it an ability. And there's quite a few like that, right? Like, Shuriken only does something if you give it Seeking Shuriken. Shooting Gallery only does something if you give it Muzzle Flash. And for abilities like that, I mean, I think that actually lowers them on the totem pole of, like, usefulness in the Helminth. Because even though the augment might be really good, you're giving up even more just for it to be usable. Instead of just like, oh, I put Nourish on it and now I have energy, or I put Roar and now I deal more damage. And it kind of sucks, especially in my opinion, for, like, new players, because you get a system like this and you hear about the concept, you're like, oh, you can, like, kind of mix and match your Warframe abilities, like, that's really cool. But then you realize, like, 65 of the 74 abilities here are just dead useless. And I'm giving a lot of wiggle. I'm giving 9 mods of, or 9 abilities that are usable, which I think that might even be generous. So this is where I come to kind of things that I think might be just straight up design flaws of Helminth. Obviously, I'm not here to argue whether or not Helminth is good or bad. I think overall it was good on the game. I think it allows for slightly more creativity in builds. But obviously with the way it's being used now, it's kind of just the Nourish button, which kind of sucks. But there's a couple limiting factors that new frames especially have with their ability being put onto Helminth. The main one is that you can't put the fourth ability onto Helminth, which I understand for like 90% of frames, right? You don't want, you know, something like Wisp 4, Caliban 4, Corvex 4, right? Your big laser beam abilities, putting those onto any frame might be a little silly, right? Maybe your exalted weapons, you don't want to give those to every frame. That would be really bad. But something like Nidus's 4, where he just puts down an area that provides kind of shitty health regen, and then like some little maggots to do things. That's worse than, like, I would argue, all of his abilities. So it's the idea that the fourth abilities are too strong is kind of inconsistent across itself. Another factor that hurts a lot of abilities is the diminished, what do they call it? The diminished potency of the augments, or of the abilities. I understand why they did this for the most part. However, for I would say a non-zero number of these, it really hurts any viability that these augments or that these mods could have, right? Or abilities could have. I'm looking at Fire Blast here, and no overguard from using this augment, right? You already are saying that you have to use your helmet slot and an augment slot, and even then you don't get the full function of this ability. Really, really sucks. Or for something like Fractured Blast, where I assume diminished strength is referring to the drop chances, not the damage. Or like this could be a decent way to get some orb drops, but then they neuter it, and now it's like, well, I don't know, is it very good? I don't think so. Diminished range on the grouping abilities, I can kind of understand, because that encourages team play, and for someone to actually have the base frame. Passive removed on Lyceth's Hunt, I think this makes sense. Self-heal removed on Nourish, I think that's probably fine. Yeah, but then things like Null Star and Eclipse, too, having their damage reduction capped at 75%. The point of these abilities, in my opinion, is the fact that you can get them to very high damage reduction amounts, right? I don't think people are using Null Star for the damaging ability of it. So at least let us use it for its intended purpose on other frames. Obviously, Mirage was kind of shoehorned in when they reworked the way Eclipse worked. However, I still don't think that Eclipse is like so dominant that we need to nerf it so much. I think making it be the same damage number as Roar, even that, I don't love that. But making the damage reduction cap at 75% just sucks. And some of these just like kind of don't make any sense. On weird sides, they have the diminished slow effect. I really can't tell you what the reason behind this is. I don't think the slow on this ability matters at all, and yet it's still diminished. I just don't understand that. Same thing here with Well of Life. Giving the immortality, I believe normally Well of Life is a 60-second cooldown on the immortality. So doubling it to 120 on an ability that, like, I don't think this ability is very good. Why would you make it worse? You know? Especially for something that's, like, as team-oriented as this. I feel like these are the kind of abilities that you want to be strong. Another core component of Helminth abilities on other frames is that quite a few abilities have synergies with the passive of a Warframe. Temple comes to mind. Nidus does not come to mind because Larva does not have any synergy with stacks. And I talked about this with friends a while ago. But I think allowing a frame's Helminth ability to actually be their passive could be an interesting idea. Obviously, a frame like Temple, who has such a universally good passive, it's basically 50% free efficiency. Maybe that would be too strong. But a passive like maybe actually Mesa's, giving some fire rate buffs to certain weapons, or Excalibur's giving more damage to certain weapons. Maybe if we go a little bit crazier, we go Protea's, or even Corvex's actually, which just gives some like raw punch through on weapons. For frames that like DE clearly struggled to pick a Helminth ability for, maybe go with their passive, right? Saito 9, when he was being revealed, I was actually like I had no idea what they were going to make his Helminth, because all of his abilities seemed way too strong to put into the Helminth. And I've forgotten what his passive actually is. Oh, wait, it's a stacking crit chance on headshots. Yeah. Maybe this could be a way to give some certain frames more meaningful Helminths, is to give their passives away. This also helps fix the issue that I personally believe, which is that a lot of frames have passives that are just like kind of worthless. Rhinos obviously comes to mind very fast. And I think passive abilities you can easily do the diminished efficacy of. So for like, if you decided to put Protea's subsume or passive into the Helminth, instead of having it be every fourth ability is 100% strength, make it every fourth ability is like 50% strength. And I think that helps out like a good number of subsumes. And it also helps out frames like Nidus. Well, actually not Nidus, because all four of his abilities rely on his passive. What's a frame who doesn't need a subsume? Maybe Harrow? Yeah, I think Harrow, all four of Harrow's abilities work pretty well together. You could give Harrow a little bit more power via Helminth, by swapping off of his, his passive, which is nice, but I would say it's not really, it doesn't really feel like it affects gameplay all that much. The last thing that I'll say is that I think a lot of the Helminth-specific abilities need some, like, crazy buffs. Or not even that crazy, just, like, something like Energized Munitions, which is something that I think I would love if it was a good ability to put on Harrow or Wisp, somebody that gives a lot of fire rate buffs. The fact that it only lasts for 5 seconds makes it, like, I don't even consider it. Because even with 300% duration, it lasts for 15 seconds. And me personally, I like it when abilities are, like, around the 45-second duration mark. And this is 15 seconds if you have 300% duration, which for most frames is pretty hard to reach. Something like Empower as well. I mean, 50% strength on your next ability cast is, like, it's basically never worth the subsume slot. If this was, again, maybe if this was 100% strength, it would be better, or if it also gives some efficiency, or just another stat in general. Golden Instinct, I really think this ability does not need to have a cooldown. Even when it works, this ability kind of feels like shit to use, because you have to follow this trail, and the trail takes, it's slow moving. It's just, I don't know, this ability should feel really good, but it just doesn't. Hades, I mean, I don't even know what they were thinking with this mod, or this ability. I don't even know how this ability works. I don't know if it's like you get 10 immunity or you resist the next 10 status effects and you have to cast it again, or how this works. Infested Mobility, again, is a mod that is an ability that I would love if it was really good. Obviously, I'm a big fan of parkour velocity. But the duration being 8 seconds, the parkour buff being only 30%, just makes it kind of weak. The Master Song, I mean, this is just, yeah, I don't know what. There's so many things wrong with this ability, I don't even know how to begin to fix it. March for Death, obviously this is kind of one of Stalker's abilities now. But like Stalker's ability is just like better, I think. So maybe this should just become Stalker's ability, and then it's like actually good. Perspicacity I think is fine. Nothing wrong with Perspicacity. Parasitic Armor, this needs to like. This is kind of just a flawed idea, because any frame that has enough shields to convert to armor where it would be useful, obviously in the video they're using Hildren, they don't have a very good health stat, and you need health for armor to be useful. So I don't know what frame this is intended for, but I don't think it's useful for any. Obviously, there was a time period where people were like using this on like Rhino to get Iron Skin up, but I think that's kind of been done. I mean, rebuild shields. Talk about another ability that just has no purpose. I mean, this feels like if DE were to actually like make shield gating be your main way of survivability, this is how they would implement it if it weren't for the fact that people discovered the Decaying Dragon Key interaction, and then they were their hand was kind of forced to add Categorizing shields. I don't know what. This has no purpose. This should just be removed. Sickening Pulse is actually a really interesting concept for a ability. I think just the problem is that most things that apply status effects are killing the target before like you would even cast this ability. So there's not a ton of instances where I'm like, dang, I applied a bunch of these statuses to everybody in the area, now I need to double all of them. And then, you know, in order to efficiently clear this room, like I feel like I just shoot my thing again that applied the status effects. And then obviously this does nothing if they already have 10 stacks of like viral or corrosive or anything. I want to say this. Yeah, Voracious Metastasis. I don't know. This ability is like so fucking weird. My friend used this on Hildren one time because obviously she doesn't use energy, and he was able to give me like hundreds of energy regen per second, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think these numbers probably just need to be tweaked, and then this could be maybe a consideration. The other problem is that this ability is inherently team oriented. This does not really benefit you. It heals you, but it doesn't, you know. I think gloom exists, so. And yeah, that's kind of the state that I see Helminth right now. It is very much so just a apply nourish button. Unless you don't need the energy economy, in which case it's an apply roar button. And yeah, I think again, like most of the things I talk about, could be fixed. Don't really think it will be, because it would require drastic overhauls of mechanics that have been in the game for a while, and I don't think they want to touch, which is fine. But I just want to talk about it, so let me know what you guys think. Obviously, I don't think it's a very hot take to say that Helminth is only good for Nourish right now. I know people don't like that it is that, and I'm kind of with them. But yeah, that's just kind of the state of the game. And maybe it wouldn't be an apply nourish button if, like in my other video, we had more efficiency mods or energy max mods etc. But yeah, that's gonna do it. This is the first video I'm recording and posting from my college dorm room, so if the audio quality is ass, then I apologize. If there's, again, as always, if there's things you guys want me to talk about, let me know. If you disagree with my take, let me know. And yeah, that's gonna probably be about it, so I'll see you guys next time.